Hey y'all, this is Johanna, and I have made some exciting changes to my mock-up frames, and I've added a whole bunch. So we've got over 140 frames to choose from now. So in order for me not to be creating super gigantic files, I have had to separate out all of the different types of frames that I now offer. So this video will show you how to access those files and how to get them into your mockup files once you purchase a bundle. So this one is Blossoms. It's a mockup bundle with just 10 blank walls. We've got quite a few different ones. I chose this one because there's a lot of space here so I can show you what to do with these frames. Let's just start with this one. And when you go to download your files online, you're going to notice that instead of one file for all the frames and shadows, there are now 7 files. And they're all about a gig. This one, the gold frames, is 1.5 gig. So the best thing to do when you get here is figure out what frames you think you're going to need for your work first, because there's no point in downloading these big files if you're never going to use them. For instance, if you don't print on canvas or you don't want to show your work on canvas, then don't download the canvas and print on metal frames. There's bronze metal, there's gallery metal. The gallery metal frames are the ones that are shown with black. They look like plastic or metal frames you would see on a gallery wall. Those are the ones you can change the colors and the colors of the mats on. Those very simple, classic gallery frames. Canvas and print on metal frames I put into one file. So those are the, print on metal with no frames. And then the movable canvas comes plain, or you can have it with the shadow box. The floating wood frame comes with those. New, I have vintage gold frames. I'm excited to show you those. I have new vintage silver frames, and I've got a ton of new wood frames, which I'm really excited to show you. So let's just start with the wood frames first. So you're gonna download this file. You'll just click over here and just say download. Once you get it and it's on your hard drive and you know where it is, then go back to Photoshop. You'll have your bundle ready. And you will want to just go ahead and open up whichever file you decided to download. So you can go to File, Open, and then you're going to go find where you put it. For me, right now, I have the wood frames here, so I'm just going to open that up. Once you open it up, you're going to see that you've got 2 tabs up here. One is going to have all of your background images, and one is going to have whichever frames you downloaded. So these are the wood frames. So what you'll need to do to start working in them as one file is just go over to your image file, click on the top, hold down your Shift key, click on the bottom, and now you'll see all 10 of those backgrounds have been selected. Once they're all selected, hit Control-C or Command-C on the Mac. That will copy it. Head back over to your frames file, and you will want to click on the background here because you want your images to be in between the background and the frames, because the frames you want on top. So click on that background layer, hit Control-V or Command-V on the Mac, and now you've got all of your images here and all your frames in one file. So once you've got everything there, you can start opening up these folders. We've got vertical, let me collapse this again, vertical, square, and horizontal. So you know what kind of image you're getting ready to put up there, so choose which one is appropriate. Let's say you've got an image that is a 2:3 ratio image and you want to put it in a wood frame. So you've got a couple of choices here. You've got 5 choices. So you can just kind of click through, turn the eyeball on and off to look at them and see, is this what I want? This is your standard natural wood, thin wood. This one you can change the color on, and you can change the matte. If it has a matte, you can change the color. Next one is without the mat. Same thing without the mat. And you've got another one that's leaning, has a leaning shadow on it. So for instance, if you wanted to just set this on the table, you can just move it around and stick it on there like so. And then you have a leaning frame. Guess I gotta wait for this to go ahead and transform it to a different size. Okay. If you don't want the leaning frame, you can choose a walnut frame, might be nice. You could choose a lighter wood, light oak. And you can just kind of go through. You get the idea. You just look for something that is going to fit what you've got. Framing is an art. This is a nice one. This is a rustic charcoal frame without a mat. So there's tons of new wood frames in here. Just have a look at them. Some of them are brand new, like some of the distressed ones are brand new. They all come with glass reflections. They come with drop shadows that you can manipulate if you like. I'll show you how to do that in a sec. All right, let's just go with this one. Once you've got your frame picked and you decide, yeah, that's the one I want, you're just going to click on this little arrow right here. Drop it down so you can see all the stuff that's in this particular folder. You want to open that folder up and you'll see you've got your glass reflection here. You've got your smart object, which is where you're going to place your art. It'll say right next to it, double click first box so you don't forget. This is the box that has the smart object. So let's just go ahead and double click on that. It'll bring up a new canvas and a new tab. And then you just need to go find your artwork. Let's see, we'll just go with, let's just go with this abstract. We'll just stick it in there. Just gonna drag and drop it. That's all I did. I just opened up my file, dragged it and dropped it into this general window, and it's gonna fall right on your canvas. Once it's in, you can just go ahead and reposition depending on what size your image is and what size frame you picked. And then click the check mark OK. And you're going to X out of this tab once it covers up all the space. So you don't have any white space left. You'll want to X out of this tab. I'm going to ask you if you want to save. You'll say yes. And there's your image in the frame that you picked. You've got a glass reflection here. You can change the opacity on it if you want it to really show up. So depending on how light or how dark your image is, if your image is super dark, your opacity needs to be light. If your image is super light, you'll need to bring your opacity up. So the opacity on this is 24%. You can just bring that right up to like 76. Now you've got a nice little reflection on there. That actually looks like a little bit too much to me, a little bit too distracting. So I would probably bring it down just a wee. And now you've got a nice subtle little reflection on there. Shadow as well. The shadows on these frames, you really want to figure out what the lighting is on the background. Do you have a dark room or you have a light room? This room is pretty light, so I don't really need to do much with the shadow, but if it was a dark mock-up and the background was super dark, you might want this shadow to be a little bit darker so it'll show up better. Same deal. Click on that layer, go up to opacity, bring that slider bar and bring it all the way up if you want to have a much darker shadow on the wall. Sometimes that works as well if you've got a mock-up that's got harsher light in the room. This one has very soft light. It was designed to have light coming through a sheer curtain. So I wouldn't go with something this dark on the shadow. I would try to match the shadow to actually the shadow on this on these grasses. So I would click on that layer and I would probably put it at somewhere around 53%. Looks pretty good to me. So that's how you combine the files, and that's how you work with the files. That's how you figure out what frames you want. There are just so many options right now for the wood frames, all kinds of crazy good stuff in here. So I've got now some thick walnut frames, thick oak frames, more oak. Isn't this gorgeous? Love this frame. So lots of new options. If you've got rustic artwork, if you're a photographer that likes to do barns or old houses, lots of options here. Distressed, rustic charcoal, rustic white, something a little bit lighter. I wouldn't pick that for this particular mock-up. I think it kind of clashes with this wood console here, but you do you. So that's pretty much it. The same will hold true for the other frame files. So for instance, if you decide you want to go with the gold frames, and you've downloaded it from my drive, you would just open that folder up. And you've got all your frames here. You could do the same exact thing, but I would not suggest that you take the frames and copy them into the image files, because for some reason when I do that anyways, all the linking that I've done, you see this little chain link here on these folders, I link all of these to one folder, because this way when you go to move something around, everything goes with it. When it's unlinked, like so, the little link is down here if you want to unlink something. If it's unlinked and you go to grab it, you're just going to grab, usually, if you just grab it, you might end up just grabbing the frame. See what I'm saying? So make sure that that link is on there. If it's not on there, go to the folder, hit Shift, go down to Shadow, so that everything in that folder is selected, and then just hit Link. And then when you go to move it around, everything goes with it. So that's why I suggest that you move the images over into your frame file that you're working on instead of vice versa. So for instance, for this one, what I would do if I decided I wanted to switch over and do a couple of gold frames is I would just go back over here. I've already got these selected. I'm going to Control C to copy it, head into here, hit background, Control V, and now I can start working on the same mock-ups, but with different frames depending on what you want. Isn't that pretty? Lots of exciting new gold frames, silver frames, bronze frames. You'll see when you get in there, there's tons to choose from. I hope you enjoy them. I really enjoy making them. If you have any questions, I'm around. Send me a direct message on Etsy. I'd be happy to Zoom with you or just answer questions over a message if you need me. Okay. So let's start first when you open up the document. The first thing you're going to want to do is figure out which of the images you want to use. So I have them all listed here, and I'll kind of click through and figure out, I'll get to the fixed frames in a sec, but for right now we'll just deal with the blank wall mockups. So you'll go through and just sort of decide which one you want to use. For this tutorial, I'm going to use the one with the largest blank wall, just so I can do a couple of extra things, which is this bedroom one, which has a nice big wall on it. We can do all kinds of things here. So once you figured out which you want to make sure that eyeball is turned on, and then you'll go next to what kind of frame do I want. There's basic frames, luxury frames, canvas, and metal prints. So I'll start first with the basic frames. So we'll click on the eyeball, click on the little drop down so that you can see what's in this folder. And we've got pretty much everything you might need, or I hope you might need. You've got A4, ratio 2:3, ratio 3:4, square, horizontal ratio 3:2, horizontal ratio 4:3, horizontal 16:9, which is a cinematic ratio, and then you'll also have a panoramic option. So figure out which one you want. So let's just say, for the sake of argument today, we want to use the horizontal frame. The next you need to decide is, so there's two here. One has a wood frame and one has a metal frame. You can change the colors on both of these, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Let's go first to the metal frame because that one's the most dramatic. So there's our metal frame. You click on it, make sure that you're using your move tool through this. Then you can just click and drag your frame into position. You can resize it by grabbing a corner over here and just clicking and dragging it so that you can make it whatever size you want. So once you figured out what size you want, the next thing you'll want to do is figure out what color frame you want. So in the folder for this frame, there are a bunch of very confusing looking options here. In general, if you don't want to change anything, you're just going to go to the green square here, click on this box, and then double click on it, and that will bring up your window to place your artwork. It's going to be in a new tab up here. It creates a whole new tab. So to place your artwork on the canvas, what you'll do is bring up a folder of artwork that you are potentially going to use and pick your image. Then you're just going to click and drag and drop. Now we've picked the 16:9, and this image is not in 16:9, it's in horizontal 3:2. So I'm going to have to crop it a little bit, enlarge it, and you just, again, you're going to click and drag these corners so that they fall completely over the canvas. You don't want to, this is a little bit close, but it's okay because it's covering. But you want to make sure you cover the whole canvas, otherwise you'll end up with a white strip or something when you save it. So once you've dropped it and resized it, you can click the check mark to let Photoshop know that you're happy with that. So now you're back at this tab. You're going to close the tab out. You're going to want to make sure also that your image is at the top here and not in between grid and drop on image, because that will bring up the grid. Now, if you're a landscape photographer, this grid will come in handy so that you can line up your horizon or anything else with the grid. And then once you're done with the grid, you can just move your image back up and the grid goes away. Once you're happy with everything, you'll just close out the window, hit the X, and when it asks you if you want to save it, you'll say yes. And there's your image. So now you can decide, okay, if you like it the way it is, black frame, white matte, you like the reflection the way it is, great. This reflection does not look like it fits this window here. So me personally, I would go ahead and turn that glass reflection off. But in the event that it does look good and you like it, there we go, it goes away. Click the eyeball and it comes back on. You can change the opacity of this reflection to be very faint if you want. So you go up here to your opacity. It's at 48%. You can drop it down to 16% and it'll be much fainter. But again, it doesn't really match, so I wouldn't be using it for this particular piece. So I'm going to go ahead and just take that glass reflection off. Now, if you decide, I don't want the black frame, I think I want a blue frame, you want to come down here and look. You'll see frame part 1 and frame part 2. Then you'll see a color box next to each of these. Make sure that the eyeball is turned on, and then you'll want to double click on the color box, and that will bring up your color picker. And then you can make that frame any color you want. So let's say you wanted to make it sort of blue, or maybe a little bit more turquoise. That might work. Or you can just maybe pick a color in your image and have it match the color in your image. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, which shows up automatically when you're in the color picker. And I'm just going to click on that sky, and it's going to automatically pick that color for me. So I'm going to say, okay, I like that. Then you'll want to do the left and right parts of the frame, and you'll do the same thing. And there you've got your color. So now you have your blue frame. The next is to decide if you want to use a matte or not. So right now we just have a white matte. And you'll see the mat board here. Again, make sure that your eyeball is turned on, and then click on the color picker. And then you can decide what color you want to have for your mat. So let's say you wanted perhaps a light beige, you could go and match it to this color here. If that's too dark, which I think it is, you can go a little bit lighter or even a little bit lighter. So you just have kind of an ivory beige mat to go with your blue frame. When you're happy with the color of the mat, you click OK. So now you've done everything in here that you could potentially do other than the picture. If you want to change the color of the picture or add something to that picture, you can do it here. If you double click on it, it'll bring up another color picker. And let's just say you wanted it to be a little bit more orangey, sunset-ish. You could potentially change the color of that picture. Although I do all of that in Lightroom, so I'm just going to leave it on white. But maybe, you have some kind of special effect you want to create on that picture. When you put it in the frame, you could do it here. So we'll say okay. The shadow turns on and off. You can see there, it looks very flat, and there's your shadow. I wouldn't mess with the shadow too much. You could potentially mess with the shadow if you wanted to. That would be a more extensive video to talk about how to manipulate those shadows. But for your purposes, you're probably fine with that shadow. So that's how you change the color frame and the color of the mat. And that's how you resize it and figure out which of the basic frames you want to use. Now, maybe you want to do several of these on one wall, in which case you could select your frame. You could make this smaller, and then you could either pick another frame. Say you wanted to do a vertical. You could pick a vertical one. I'm clicking on this. I'm going to resize it. And you could just bring that in over here if you want. And again, you can change the color of the frame to match this color if you want, or maybe you want to do like a beige frame with a blue mat and kind of switch it up a little bit. Or if you want to use the same frame that you were using before, you want it to be the exact same frame, you can just click on it, do Control-C, head over here, and do Control-V, and now you've got a copy of that frame. So that's how you can create a gallery wall. You can just pick and choose. You can go with a square one if you want, and move that into place. Just click on it, click and drag, and put it wherever you like. And that's how you can create a gallery wall. You can create sets of 2 or 3, and you can change those colors around to whatever suits your fancy. If you don't want to use any of the frames, you can go with a canvas frame. And the canvas frames come also in different sizes. A4, you've got several vertical, square, and 2 horizontal there. So let's just go with the square one for now. I'm going to click on it, drag it up into place, make it larger. I'm going to hit OK. And the same thing with this. This has got, the canvas has the beveling, embossing, a color overlay to make it just slightly look like linen canvas, so it's not totally white. A gradient, so that you've got, it's hard to tell, but there is a gradient on here where this side of the canvas is slightly lighter than this side is slightly darker. So I arrange all of my mock-ups to have the light coming from the right-hand side so that it will match the canvas and the shadows, the glass reflections as well. So everything is coming from the right. You've got a canvas texture on it as well. So you can get in close, you can see that canvas texture on there. And it will look very similar to what somebody will get when they order one of your prints on canvas. So let's go ahead and do that so you can see how it looks on canvas. So here's a square. I don't think I have any square beach scenes, but that's all right. I'll just pick one and we'll just crop it. I'm going to resize it. I'm grabbing my corners again. I'm gonna resize it and figure out where. I'll go with the rule of thirds here. Bring that up just a little bit. Hit my check mark. Save it. And now you've got your canvas. So it should look very much like what your image will look like once it's on canvas and it returns from your printers. So for those of you who like to have your work printed on canvas, these are a great choice. And you've got vertical, square, horizontal, and you've got several different sizes in both vertical and horizontal to get your image in that way. So if you don't want canvas, that's okay too. Maybe you want a metal frame. The same options are pretty much available for the metal frames as well. So again, there's nothing really here to change on the metal frame. So it's pretty simple. You're just gonna hit the drop down and you're going to double click where the green square is and put something on that image. Now these are a little bit darker gray, and I'll talk a little bit once I put the image down about some things you can change on this. So let's just go with this one. I'm gonna pull my corners out. Hit OK, close it out, save it. And now you've got your image on this metal frame. If we get in closer, you'll be able to see that there is, you've got a drop shadow on it, you've got a reflection on it, and it does look a little bit darker than if you were to print on white paper. Now some metal printers print on glossy white, and you wouldn't have that effect on there. Some print directly on the metal, and so you're going to have a little bit more of that gray coming through. Some are glossy and some are matte finish. So if you are going to be printing on glossy, you might want to keep the reflection in there, or you might not. You might want to make same deal on the reflection. You can just change the opacity, and that will make it even lighter. That's a little bit too light. There you go. Or you can just turn that reflection off if you don't want it on there. So that's pretty simple. Same principles apply here for these. So that's all you can change on this one, is just basically the reflection, and that's it. So that's your movable metal frames. Now we'll get to wall shadows. So once you've got something up that you really like and you're happy with, we'll go back to this square canvas. You might want to put a wall shadow on it. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see where the borders of this wall shadow are, because I want to show you how you can move it around. So you'll click on the eyeball, click on the drop down, and you're going to have 8 options here. They're left and right. The only ones that will, well, not only, I mean, maybe you want to get a little creative and have the shadows coming from a different direction, but really it's the right hand ones that you're going to want to pay attention to, because all of my mock-ups have the light coming from the right. If for some reason you flip the image, then you can use the wall shadow that goes on the left. So we'll click the eyeball so you can see that wall shadow show up on the wall. If you click the drop down box, you can also change the opacity of this wall shadow. So right now it's at 36%. You can change that and make it much lighter. In this particular case, it's kind of washing out the image. And so I would probably go a little bit darker to get some of that image back, or I would go without the wall shadow on this particular piece. If you have a darker piece, this washout won't happen, but you want to just be mindful of what your image looks like and what these shadows do to the image, because it is going to fall right on top of the image. Now, not every image would do that. Not every shadow will do that. Let's try this one. You're still going to get some washout here on this right hand side. So if you make it too light, it's at 29% here. If you make it too light, it's really going to wash out the bottom of that image. So if I were to go, let's go back to my canvas here and I'll put in something darker so you can sort of see the difference I'm just going to hit the delete key and delete that here. And then I'm going to go find another image that's darker. Let's go with, say we go with these sandy dunes. This is a black and white. I'm going to resize it, move it just a tad, hit my check mark, close it out, save it. So now, as you can see, it's still going to make it a little bit lighter, but it's not going to completely wash it out. Let's go with a little bit darker on this shadow. Even probably go a little bit darker on this one. And that'll bring back some of that tonal range that you have in your photograph. And you'll still get these nice wall shadows on here as well. It gives it a little bit more of a moody feel. So that's that. You've got quite a few to choose from here. You've got 4 actual shadows. This one has a palm leaf on it, and this one has got like trees outside and a little bit more of a grid. Now, if you decide, oh, I like that shadow, but the grid is not falling where, say, the grid on the window is, you can always move it. If I move it down too far, I'm going to end up with a line up here at the top. You can see where the shadow cuts off. So what I'll need to do is click on it, make it a little bit larger, and then I can bring it down so it lines up with that window right there. Oops. There we go. And click OK. And then it makes a little bit more visual sense to have that line there. Although with this particular window, you would want to see those lines on this one and this one. So I wouldn't use this shadow for this window. I would probably go with the shadow grid on the right. And since this one isn't right up against this window, it's kind of over here, it can make more sense that these lines line up here. So that's what I would do on that one. And those are your wall shadows. So I'm always available for help. If you get into one of my files and you get really confused, or if you move something around and then you can't get it back to the way it was, of course, I would always say, don't save the whole bundle while you're working in it, because if you mess something up, then you won't have your original file to go back to. But when you are finished and you're ready to save your file, you could say, okay, I'm ready, I want to save this. Just go up to File, hit Save a Copy, and then you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to call this Test. I'm going to choose JPEG for this particular one, and then I'm going to click Save. There we go. And for Etsy, if it's just a mock-up for Etsy, I use 3. Low quality. It's going to take up less room on your computer to save these mock-up copies. If you get too big, the files are going to be large and you'll quickly run out of hard drive space. So I stick with 3. If you need it to be higher resolution, then yeah, sure, you can go up as high as you want, but it will make your file size larger. So that's how you make your copy. To say okay. And then when you go to close out your window and it says, do you want to save? You can just say no. And this way, when you come back to it, it will be exactly in the condition that it was in before you worked in it. And you don't have to worry about removing all of these images and so forth for your next round of mock-ups. So so I hope that answers any questions that people have. Hope this makes it a little easier to understand the file. And again, I'm available anytime. Just direct message me on Etsy and I'd be happy to walk you through any changes. We can do a Zoom session, or I can try to explain over messaging, however it makes you comfortable. So thanks for listening and happy selling.